Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Enough to Keep Going podcast. I am your host, Osiris Prime. This is episode number 118, and this is our deep dive episode where we dive deep into our news stories from the past week. And, we'll break them down and, tear them apart and hopefully put them back together in one piece. But with me tonight, we have, yes, your eyes do not deceive you, we have all four hosts tonight. It's been a long time since that's happened. Mr. Gascles, I'm going to start with you. How are you tonight?
I'm here. I spent an hour and a half by the side of the road with a flat tire this afternoon. So,
nice.
That did not prevent me from getting on here to talk about games.
Nice.
Flat tire be damned.
Mr. DBQ Hams, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Did not have a flat tire, so that is pretty good. Although I'm sure my son who got braces on today would have appreciated being late and having a flat tire rather than getting braces.
And yes, my bearded brother is back. Finally, Mr. Swiss Guard. Swiss, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, although I also have a tale of woe.
Uh-oh.
So yesterday I cut my finger. And I learned today that if you have a Band-Aid on your index finger, HP EliteBook laptops do not register Windows clicks when you're using the trackpad. And I wasted about 20 minutes thinking that Windows was hung because I'm clicking and nothing is happening. Beyond that, everything is good.
Well,
and Agascles, I got to say, I like your T-shirt.
That's a thumbs up for you guys.
Yeah, for the audio listeners who don't know what he's talking about, I'm wearing a Aperture Science T-shirt, obviously from the popular video game Portal.
1970s era Aperture logo.
Not the game though. A little more advanced than that. All right, we got lots to talk about here. Actually, we had a lot of stories this past week, but we doing the lit down to 4 for now, and then maybe we'll jump into some other ones if we have time. So up first, we're going to start with a little Microsoft news. So Microsoft had the Xbox All Access, program that they are bringing out or about to bring out. I don't think it's started yet. Where you can, do monthly payments on an Xbox, either S or X. Excuse me. And that's S, the regular S, and also the all digital version, or SAD, as people like to call it, or the Xbox S, X. It was, I think, you do about, 24 months, I believe it was broken down at least at the time when it first introduced or when they first announced it. So they've added some things now in this article, and this was from Eurogamer.net. So you can obviously do, the monthly payments of, let me see here. So, here it says £18. So I believe that is, they have it further in the article here. I can find it, what that breaks down to in US money, or if somebody can look that up. You get those monthly payments, and then next year, when the Scarlet comes out, in quotes, because we don't know what it's called yet, you can actually upgrade your system by trading it in through this program. Now, there's obviously some caveats here that they mentioned in the story. So the console you're trading in has to be in working condition, good working condition, or good standing, obviously. So I'm assuming it has to turn on at least and be functional, at least for the few minutes that wherever you're buying it from is gonna check on it. I don't know how they're really gonna check that too much, but and then you also have to. Well, I guess this is in the UK or in Sweden. You have to be in good financial standing, which they will check your credit, I'm assuming. I don't know if they're going to do that here so much. I'm assuming once you're in the program, you should be good, I would assume, in the US. But
I would actually assume. So for people who don't know, so when you lease your smartphone from Verizon, when you come back around to do your upgrade, they do a credit check when you are ponying up to say, hey, I want to lease this new phone. I have the Samsung Galaxy Note 9. I want to trade it in and lease the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 for the next 2 years, that does initiate a revised credit check based on your current standing. So I would expect that would be the same for Xbox.
Yeah, and then they actually do mention here a little small print that there will be, well, at least in the UK, there's going to be a £15 upgrade fee. So I suppose that's not too bad for upgrading. But so I know what I'm assuming you guys are not on the payment program or will be on the payment program. Do you think this is a good deal? I mean you get access to the Scarlet pretty much. I think it's pretty much right away. I believe.
I think it is right away as long as you do the upgrade, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the upgrade price is semi-reasonable. I mean, again, we don't really know what the final sticker price is going to be for the new console. I think it makes sense. I don't know that it is something that is going to get a lot of existing owners who would probably move up to Scarlet, like yourself. But the question would be if there's somebody who's kind of sitting on the fence or sat out the Xbox this last generation and was a PlayStation owner, that then it would be an easy way for them to get in with Game Pass, try a little bit before the end of this generation, and migrate up. It seems more like, they have tried this a couple different times. This is the one that actually seems to make the most sense because of the console trade-off. But whether or not it actually is worth the investment in terms of the monthly payment, I don't know that it's going to get a lot of traction, but it's nice to have an option there.
Yeah.
And just before we move on further, you did want somebody to fact check the fee in US dollars, right?
Yes.
So right now, or at least initially, it was $21.99 per month for 24 months for anybody who got an Xbox One S, $34.99 per month for subscribers to get an Xbox One X. In the new version of Xbox All Access, the starting price will be $19.99. Yeah, but it doesn't specify what the price differential is if you go to a One X. They say what they have in ad copy here is that it's for an Xbox One X, Xbox One S, or Xbox One S All Digital Edition bundle. But I believe that there is a step up price differential for the One X, but it doesn't say exactly what it is. So I would guess for the Xbox, I guess that $19.99 is probably for the Xbox One S and maybe also the Xbox One S All Digital Edition. Maybe there's no price differential, but then I would expect that it would be a skosh bit more for the One X, probably $25 or $30 per month.
Yeah, and also with when you do the All Access, you also get one controller and then 24-month membership to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. So that's a pretty decent deal. So no games, but technically with Game Pass, you'll get games, obviously. So you'll be able to download. Yeah, I mean, obviously this is not going to be for us. We already have the console. We'll buy the console, when it comes out. But it's a good way to bring in, people who might not be able to afford these consoles, right away, or can pony up the money up, up front. So, Swiss, is this going to make you get an Xbox? Pay $20 to $24 or $35 a month?
I mean, obviously there's games on Xbox that are appealing to me, but a lot is available on PC, a lot of those games. So there's not that much incentive for me, and quite frankly, I'm looking forward a little bit to the doldrums ahead of the new console releases because I have such a big backlog of games that I want to play. And so no, I don't think I'm going to be picking up any new hardware anytime soon.
Okay. Well, not console hardware, at least. from the chats we've been having recently. But let's keep you on the mic unless anybody else has any other.
Well, I guess my question is why isn't this for us, or why do we not think this would be for people? I would say on at least a couple of occasions we have, maybe not vehemently, but talked about the challenge of the initial upfront cost associated with this console as being a potential barrier to us onboarding early. So admittedly, I don't think that I've heard of at least the three of us really talk about not getting an Xbox One Scarlet, but definitely maybe not getting one, in the launch window. So I guess one of my questions is if part of the abeyance is, the potentially $4.99 upfront cost. I don't know. I haven't seen in this that you. I mean, there's a feeling that that they want you to be paying into it for a full year. I don't, but I haven't actually seen that written as part of the thing. So I guess part of my question is would there be anything that would prevent you from going and getting an Xbox One X in August of 2020 and paying into it for like 2 months and then just popping the upgrade whenever the Scarlet drops and rolling it over? I don't know that anything prevents you from doing that, but I guess part of my question is if cost is an issue, either for us or for our assessment of other people, why wouldn't this be a potential outlet?
So I wonder, looking at this and the pricing structure here, I wouldn't be surprised to see the same structure with a different price done next fall when the system launches as well, regardless of the upgrade, right? Like, I think, and that is this piece is, I think I still have questions about how much does the rollover cover? Is it everything that you've paid in? Does it go toward the price of the new console? I mean, granted, you're just kind of rolling over the subscription. My question of why it wouldn't be for me at this point is I don't necessarily need to be paying for a second Xbox for the next 8 months. But you're right? If I can jump in 2 months beforehand, sure. Or if this came up, I'm definitely hesitant about the buy-in price for the new consoles. And if I could do this, which, the only real discount that you miss here is any type of sale on Xbox Ultimate, that the actual price is pretty much MSRP when you add it all up together. So it's not like you're getting you're not really paying any interest on it. You're just paying it really in installments. So it's not a bad buy-in. I think it's a question of the timing of it. And some of it could be just getting people into this pipeline so that they can do something similar next year.
I'm curious if they're going to do anything where, well, first, I agree with DB that, as far as buying a new console, layaway is a thing. Like, Walmart always, or whoever always advertises it around Christmas and whatnot.
Yeah, so it's just that this is a layaway that lets you play the console while you have it on layaway. Right.
So, just the installment payments is going to be an appealing option. It's going to be attractive for consumers. Going towards like more, I don't want to say the term hardcore gamers, but people that would be willing to or planning to buy the console, at launch. Do you wait for whatever form the new subscription takes place for Scarlet, or do you pick it up in August? Do you think that they would do something where active subscribers, people that are actively under contract, would have priority when it comes to hardware? Because every time there's a release, there's always supply and demand issues.
Right, and that to me is actually is the attractive piece of it. Is this a way under the supply chain constraint of the launch window? Is this a way for me to secure a unit early as a priority customer, and not have to do right? Because what I wind up doing is when I want to get one of these things in the launch window, it's often like the Great Paper Chase, right? It's if you don't pre-order, which sometimes I don't. Like sometimes the pre-order pops and I'm like, I just don't have that spare $500 to like toss around, right? When that happens, then what I wind up doing is I wind up chasing it in the launch window, which means I gotta find all the websites with these goofy, local inventory trackers, with all the parts of the heat map, and then I'm driving all over the state, right, trying to track one of these things down. often frequently arriving at a store after they've like gotten rid of their last one. So this seems to me to be potentially an optimal way, as Swiss mentioned. I would hope that these people will get a slip or an email or something before pre-orders even go up that say, hey, if you want priority on getting a unit like on launch day, just check the yes box. Now, that all being said, from a financial, I need to say this, from a financial perspective, this is never a thing that Agasically Stainless would recommend anybody do. I don't like people owning my stuff while I own it. I never advocate payment plans or yada yada yada. I advocate when you want to go buy something, save your money, go pay cash for a thing, own it, right? Don't induce the burden of the liability that's associated with this, where if this thing bricks, you now own, a $500 piece of equipment that you can't use. So that's a sidebar, but
yeah. For me, I already have 2 Xboxes, so I got an S and an X. So when this comes out, I'll probably trade in the S, since everything should be backwards compatible, as far as they're telling right now. With the new console. So just for me, yeah, I'm not gonna use this. But if I was, much younger, and obviously maybe I would just get into the job. I just got a job or something, and maybe I don't have that kind of cash. Maybe this would be a good idea. So yeah, but yeah, it seems like a good program. For most people. So we'll see if everything pans out. And like you said before, guys, because we don't even know what the Scarlett's going to be priced at. So. Most likely probably 500. That's what everybody's saying for that and for the PS5. So we'll see what happens. So let's move on. Mr. Swissguard, we have some EA Valve news.
Yep.
That we want to talk about tonight.
So I'm going to be quoting from the official Electronic Arts website. Electronic Arts and Valve have partnered to put EA games in the hands of players on Steam. Starting next spring, EA Access, our ever-growing subscription service powered by great games and member benefits, will be making its way to Steam. EA Access is the first and only gaming subscription service available on Steam and the 4th platform featuring an EA subscription. The partnership kicks off with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, trademark, launching on November 15th and available for pre-order today. In the coming months, players on Steam will also be able to play other major titles like The Sims, trademark 4, and Unravel, trademark 2. Multiplayer games like Apex Legends, trademark FIFA 20, and Battlefield, trademark 5 will become available next year. And players on both Origin, trademark, and Steam will have the ability to play together. So, barring the
trademark.
The obnoxious corpo speak. When this news hit, I think I replied in the Discord chat that it was quite sensible. Why not have Steam is a very big, obviously the biggest player in PC gaming. Why try to reinvent the wheel? Use the infrastructure that's there and get your games out in players' hands. So, this makes a lot of sense for both parties, really.
Yeah, I was excited about this as well as somebody who is an EA Access subscriber and has a larger, has a very small friends list in Origin and a much larger one in Steam. The ability for crossplay on some of those games, I think, is also hopefully a boost to. We talked about this a couple weeks ago in terms of maybe we didn't, but the EA earnings call, right? That there's not another Battlefield coming out for another year and a half. So being able to putting up Battlefield 5 on Steam potentially expands the number of. Same thing with Apex Legends. EA is going to lean into Apex Legends next year, and so having it up on Steam potentially expands that user base as well. I'll be curious to see what the interface looks like if you're an EA Access member and you're playing through Steam. Does it unlock those games, or is it simply just, is it like a third-party launcher that then kind of tunnels its way back into Origin in order to launch the game.
Which is how it works for the other clients, and I find that to be confusing for gamers who don't like track and are not constantly in the dialogue about these things like we are, and don't necessarily understand like APIs and licensing and things like that. Like, so Rainbow Six Siege was just playing an on-stream session of that over this weekend, and of course, I purchased it through Steam, but it launches out of the Uplay client. You wind up having to have both clients open for the thing when that happens. Both what cracks me up is you get the little pop-up alert thing for both different clients. You first get the Steam one, press Alt plus whatever to get the Steam overlay. Then a couple seconds later, you get the press F4 plus Alt or whatever to get the Uplay overlay. And I'm like, come on, guys. So, but I get it, right? It's a thing that happens because of the licensing structure and who's doing the DRM and yada yada yada. So I guess I'm gonna a rapid fire question, and I'm gonna go what on my screen is top left and around clockwise. One word answers or short phrase answers. When this pops, do you start buying your EA games through Steam or through Origin? Osiris Prime.
No, I don't play PC games, so.
Swissguard.
Steam.
DBQ Hams.
I'm gonna go Origin. Actually, I said that hesitant because I still have Mass Effect, the original Mass Effect, on Steam, and and then it was abandoned shortly thereafter. So this is where, but I mean, I do wonder if this is. I'm way past my short answer. So
No. You met the rubric by the initial short answer up front. Yeah. I think I still go Origin also, and part of my reason is my customer service experience, right? So I've been either burned, I've been burned one time by Steam on getting a refund, but two, my expectation when I'm operating in Steam is that Valve is the monolith, and I'm never gonna have any dialogue with Valve, right? They are a complete Berlin Wall of a corporation. My emails will go unanswered. I will never get anything back from them. My experience on Origin, and it was swimming through pain. However, I got this is Prime when we went and bought Battlefront 2, right, on Xbox. There was some problem or something with mine, and I had to swim through like connecting it to my Xbox Live account, and that was problematic on Origin. Yes, I was problematic on Origin because I had multiple Origin accounts because of the way they implemented things when they first out. So, but I was able to get all that unsnockered, and I got email response from EA. I got an EA rep in chat, and I got on a phone with an EA rep, and I was able to get all that unbuckled and get it aligned correctly. That would have never happened if I had to get interface and go through Valve. I would be sitting there stuck, having made a $60 purchase that I couldn't actually play. Right on, obviously Valve wouldn't have taken care of my Xbox, but at any rate, that problem would have gone unaddressed, in my opinion. And I feel the same way. Well, I land in the same place you do, DBQ, where I feel like the smaller customer base of Origin gives me greater feelings of assurance that my issues would go addressed, whereas with Valve, I'm just one of 5 million bajillion people who buy games there.
No, do you guys think this opens the doors for we know Ubisoft is going to be on Stadia, but do you think they'll jump over to Steam too, or just other services will come over to Valve?
I think Ubisoft is already on Steam.
Oh, are they? Okay.
Yeah, so like Star Trek Bridge Commander I bought through Steam. Assassin's Creed is sold through Steam.
I'm pretty sure there's Bethesda on there too.
Yeah.
Oh, so
well, let me slightly correct that. No, in regards to what Ubisoft is doing now. So as of lately and most recently, Ubisoft has said that they have an agreement to sell everything through Epic with exclusivity. I expect that to continue, and I expect them not to show up with their newer games on Steam. Their older things prior to this whole Epic craze were on Steam, but yeah, they've got exclusive to Epic, and I would expect that to remain.
All right. Any other? I think I guess because did you put the tweet in about the? I guess it was a publisher sale.
Oh yeah, so yes, so yeah, that was pretty cool. Is that not only do the games show up on Steam, but immediately thereafter to celebrate, and in conjunction with I guess the Halloween sale was also going on at the same time. But all of the EA stuff that was available on Steam was on sale in a publisher sale. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that was the same day, right?
I think so. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, those deep discounts from Steam. So all right. So for one big monolithic publisher or game company to another, we got some Blizzard. Well, we have some Blizzard news, but BlizzCon was this weekend.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
Let's talk about BlizzCon. So we'll hear a couple of announcements and then some news around BlizzCon as well. So BlizzCon happened this past weekend. There were questions around some of the potential for protests. It seemed to be relatively small, related to the banning of a Hearthstone player. And then you get the official reveal of Diablo 4 with a 9-minute cinematic trailer and some hands-on play that attendees had as well. And then you had a 2 or 3 minute trailer of Overwatch Chapter 2, which again was leaked prior to this through ESPN and a number of other sources. Confirmed the PvE mode. In Overwatch, Diablo 4 has some PvP back in it since the Diablo 2, and it looks to be a big open world, instance world as well. And then you had the kind of, to start it all off, you had the president, J. Allen Brack, get up on stage and provide an explanation, and not necessarily an apology, but addressed the Hearthstone and the banning issue as well, saying that they moved too quickly. They were too slow to talk with the fans, the player base, with the community, and they didn't live up to the high standards they set for themselves. He said they failed in their purpose, and for that they are sorry and they accept accountability. Those are his exact quotes. I say it's kind of an apology because they do acknowledge, but what they apologize for is the process, not necessarily the action, or the named piece of that.
Well, and really just the PR part of the process, right? Like, I mean, as you read further down in the interview, there's no apology for the action they took. It's only because they didn't maybe get out in front of informing everyone and explaining to everybody as well. Seems like. Yeah,
right. I heard a good analogy another podcast had about this. This is the "I'm sorry you're offended" apology, right? That this is not necessarily apologizing for the action, but it is very much about the PR aspect of that and the follow. It's about trying to kind of frame this. It is PR speak, and whether I think that the PC Gamer had a follow-up article about this where they do have an interview with J. Allen Brack, and they ask some of those questions in terms of the opening statements. And they ask about the casters who were also banned, and then they ask about China's involvement, NetEase's involvement. NetEase is the Chinese company that publishes the games in China, and that I think that's another interesting statement there, because they do say that J. Allen Brack says that NetEase was a part of this conversation, as was the Taiwanese team, the Hearthstone leadership team. I mean, in some ways they say everybody was involved. But an interesting piece about that is that there was a lot of speculation of how much that some of this response, the quickness of it, was driven by NetEase and kind of the Chinese partnerships. So he does acknowledge that that they were part of those discussions. So, I think I have thought about this for the past 2 weeks in terms of how it's framed, what it means, the democratic stance of it, the corporate kind of bottom line stance of it, but also the corporate, and he makes a good point here is that, that it's not a platform for any speak. It's about the games. And I think I think you could believe that as a corporate piece of messaging. I think that raises a couple of questions about why the casters are being banned for 6 months as well, right? If you think about a sports team where if a player made a controversial statement, the sideline reporter wouldn't necessarily get banned in the process for holding the microphone during that. So
yeah, if you read down further in that PC Gamer article, I mean, basically, the way he frames it is look, essentially, he kind of talks about them as outsourced contractors, right? Like, we essentially hire these guys to hold interviews on our behalf, and to in the holding of those interviews to maintain a semblance of order. And they failed to do that, right? Now, I guess if I read into that, I go, well, how in the world did the guy transition into like the paint mask and the thing or whatever that he had over his face like instantaneously and make his statement without them knowing? I don't know, but that's basically what he held them accountable for.
Yeah, and I think you can watch the video of the casters as well, and they do duck their heads down, whether that's to kind of get out of the way to not be associated with it, or because they know that something's coming. And so they're trying to do that. I think that there's questions around there. Again, back on the PR aspect of this, the way it was handled, the way it's communicated, I think is potentially problematic about how they message things moving forward. But I think the fact that, they've come out and kind of addressed it, it should be interesting to see how the Blizzard community, who is usually a pretty strong company supportive community, responds to this, and if this is something that drives a continued wedge through it, or if it is something where people move on from until the next kind of flare up as well. So yeah, I think that's why it becomes news, is because of the conversations around it. So I say all that as somebody who also watched the Overwatch 2 trailer and cheered, audibly at one point in time as characters showed up. So, I have a little bit of fandom in me, but I'm also conflicted about how companies choose to go about their business as well. So anybody else? Diablo, Overwatch 2, any other? The beta for Warcraft 3 Reforged is out as well.
Yeah, I kind of skipped through the Diablo 4. Just I didn't realize it was like 9 minutes until I was like, whoa, it's pretty long.
It's pretty lengthy.
Yeah, I mean, it looked cool. I saw a little bit of the gameplay, so I mean, that looks to be interesting. I mean, I like 3, so hopefully they'll bring it to the consoles, either Switch or Xbox. Assuming they will. I was never an Overwatch guy, so I mean, the trailer, like I mentioned in the Discord chat, that looked pretty cool. I mean, I always love their animation and their like the cutscenes and everything, so that looked great. But I'll probably just pass on that. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. I thought it was interesting the way that they're rolling out Overwatch 2, the strategy there, which is effectively everybody gets it, whether you have Overwatch 1 or 2, it's all the same, right? I mean, you get the same PvP experience, but if you have Overwatch 2, you also get PvE, which, I immediately saw online a bunch of comments about why don't they call it like an expansion? I don't like why the numbering, because it almost sounds like we want to treat this like a sequel, but it doesn't really feel like a sequel. And it reminds me of the whole thing with like StarCraft 2, where it's like, well, it's all StarCraft 2, but it's in 3 different games, but it just was like a weird. Sometimes I don't understand like their strategy there.
But it's, I guess so to me what it sounds like is in software terms, to me it's kind of what I would think I would normally call like an overlay. So those who have and I'm asking these as questions to make sure I understand it. Those who have the Overwatch 1 core package can always still play with each other, right? But those who have the Overwatch 2 overlay can then play with other players who have that overlay, right?
Not entire. So anyone that has Overwatch 1 or 2 can entirely play PvP together.
So I think all the PvP maps and modes will be available, whether you own the original or 2.
Right. Okay. All right.
So in some ways, I think I see that as more of keeping a player base united,
right.
Of keeping a player base broad, and given the fact that they have a esports league around that, it also means that it kind of keeps everybody on that same type of meta rather than two different. They're not balancing two different game pieces of that as well.
Well, and essentially what it does is it really means that you're only paying for the PvP aspect or PvE aspect of the content, right? And allows you to do things like the Nintendo Switch players who are paying for Overwatch 1 right now. If they don't want to pay for PvE, they don't get double billed right off the bat, right? They just
which is why it's which is why it's going to be interesting to see what the price point is on 2.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I was thinking about as well. Like if this is a $40 pack, sure, right? I think in some ways I agree with you, Swiss. It does feel, at least at this point, it feels like it would be Reaper of Souls type of expansion. But I think just in the marketing aspect of that, making it Overwatch 2 provides a fresh start for people to jump in, rather than it's an expansion, but I don't already own this game, but now I need to buy both of them and be able to play it. Where if it has a numbered sequel, it becomes. This is some of a similar conversation that Destiny 2 went through at one point in time.
Well, and I was going to say, to me, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. My initial take on it is it feels less confusing, because the thing that confuses me, and I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Destiny 2 player, right? So the thing that confuses me is, across the 3 different platforms that I play on, is I often hit points where I'm like, so what do I need to buy on which platform I bought this, and then I skipped that, and then I bought this. What do I need to buy to bring all of this up to the same level across the 3 platforms I play on, right? I definitely, in the wake of the transition, I was constantly getting questions. Well, what do I need to buy to come up to whatever? And I'm like, dude, I don't know. And they did that thing where with Destiny 2, at one point they only had the one package available, and they were like, we don't care what you bought before. Everybody, to get the remainder of anything else that you want, you all have to pay $40, and this is what the thing is called. Okay, and I'm like, but that thing that you're calling it, that's not what I actually need. Yes, but the thing that you need is underneath this thing that we call this thing.
That's right. Yeah, it's inside of it.
Yeah, so be interesting to see if this comes off as less confusing.
It certainly can't come off as more confusing. So.
It's a commentary or an example of the state of gaming that we live in, because now it's games aren't discrete commodities that you kind of just you produce. You put it out there on the shelves and people buy it. It's they're long tail service engines or something. You know what I mean? And then as you add content, you need to figure out how to, like you said, get it all where it all plays nicely together. But
so is the PvE stuff? Is that are those just solo missions, or is that co-op stuff? I didn't really get to look into it all that much.
At this point, it looks like it's co-op. So there's a 4-player co-op, which has some story pieces. At least they showed one of those modes with Lucio, with 4 different characters. Doesn't matter who, right? But there's some intro piece, and it plays out kind of similar, but a little more expanded than some of their seasonal PvE events at this point. They've done a similar one in the springtime as kind of the history of Overwatch. But then there's also going to be a hero mode, which you can level up your character. And I don't know if it's going to be. I mean, in some ways, it almost feels like the story mode from Battleborn, but I think they'd probably rather say it's closer to the adventure mode in Diablo. Right? It's a little more discreet. You can level up your player throughout it, but they may have the ability to reset that at some point in time. But there's some kind of progression that carries on.
Okay. No, I was just wondering because I mean I might be interested at least in that piece, just because the multiplayer I couldn't get into that kind of gameplay. So
I'm gonna hate to bring it back around to the political stuff. I for one, it's a little egotistical sounding, maybe a lot egotistical. I for one love this interview and the responses because it is exactly what I said when we discussed this on the last deep dive, which is that the stance was that it was not about what he said, it's about the fact that he said anything, and that the terms of service are written around, and what Blizzard is looking for was to have a conversation about games and to not politicize that platform. So I was very pleased to see him come back and say that's exactly their justification and rationale, and it makes it a curious thing, right, in those closed door conversations, not Blizzard in conjunction with NetEase, but the internal conversations that they had, which is at some point they had to acknowledge we're going to take a lot of heat for this, but we think that this is the right thing for us to do, and for that I have to give them some degree of applause, because it's right in his rationale exactly what I was concerned about. Is like, if you don't do it to this guy, the next guy who comes in who's a white supremacist or a Nazi or whatever type of thing that we don't want to have happen, you have to let that go. And now that person has an argument as to why they said it because you let it happen to the last guy. So
yeah, right. From a corporate piece, I can definitely understand why they would enforce this the way that they did.
Yeah, I've as I was thinking about it the last few days, I kind of came to that same conclusion of, you can't just let those broadcasts, you can't just let it be whatever whims of your players are coming out there. Like, I mean, you look at, I look at other sports leagues and how they've handled similar situations, and it can easily get away from you, and you can end up being punished financially. If one player ticks off half of your customer base. Now, I think a vast majority of Blizzard's customer base probably supports Blitzchung and what he was saying. All right? But like you said, Agasicles, they have to consider the precedent that's being set. So,
well, I agree with that. I still think that the caster piece is probably where there's. That's the piece I wrestle with. Of I can completely see from a corporate perspective why Blitzchung, had repercussions for taking the stand, in that way. Then the same would be true for anybody.
I wish they had maybe given him more of a slap on the wrist a little bit, for the sake of PR. Like, this is what his statement wasn't like a white supremacist statement. It's like, I think a vast majority of people are for freedom of speech and appreciate what's happening in Hong Kong right now, and are not really on the side of draconian police state crackdowns on freedom of speech. So you have that's out there. That's kind of the backdrop of this. They needed to punish him to set the precedent, but I think they could have also mollified a lot of fans by saying, look, we can't be doing this in the game thing, but the initial 12 year down to 6 months was, I don't think, strong enough. And I wonder if, or the reduction wasn't strong enough. And I wonder if going down to like a month or whatever, just would that have been like putting their contract with NetEase or whatever in that much danger? I mean, they could have really saved themselves a lot of pain and anguish, like in the flame wars and the message boards of the internet, to maybe if they had been a little bit more lenient.
And I feel like that's what he was saying, that they weren't, that they didn't execute well off the get. And I think the initial severity of the punishment is maybe one thing that, that it took a second round of them considering the gravity of that. I kind of agree. I mean, this could have also been looked at as, hey, do we just issue the guy a warning? So I feel like all their justifications and rationale for taking action are okay. The severity is a thing that to me is questionable. DBQ, on your thing about, punishing the casters, and I'm not saying I necessarily agree with this or that it put salve over the whole thing. I guess the analog that's in my head is, when there was the Super Bowl thing with Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson, they both got punished, right? Only one of them ripped a thing off of a costume, but both of them got punished. And again, it's still to this day, it's an urban myth as to whether or not Janet knew, right, that Justin was going to do that. But at the end of the day, the way they approached it was, look, you both are in the target zone for that.
Yeah. I'm just throwing my piece in here. Like DB said, I think the caster thing is probably like the one thing that I didn't even realize that the casters had been punished until I read this article, because I don't know if that was right away. Like, I don't know if they had mentioned that right away, like they did with Blitzchung. Or they did. Okay,
yeah,
I don't remember seeing that.
Part of the initial. Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if that was like maybe just like a footnote for most of the most of the websites, because I didn't remember seeing that when I was reading.
No, I think the internet and the media, in their fervor over the Blitzchung thing, that wound up getting buried in the noise.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess it is what it is, and I guess this punishment, along with I guess because you put that story up with about Epic's punishment of a Fortnite player. These companies, and even Fortnite and just Epic, I should say, they've obviously done punishments before, for things, and they were just boom, they're strict. Like, they did their punishment, they didn't even say anything about it. So I mean, it's well within their right to to do these things. Obviously, it's their game, and their rules, and not rules, but like their policies and stuff that the players have to abide by. So morally, yeah, maybe I mean, I don't know if you really want to get into that part, but it just kind of stinks kind of all around. Just everybody's mad about everything. So
it's hard to say. Like, I can't draw an equivalence between what's happening with Blizzard and, say, like a Google, who's actively censoring and modifying search results depending on the government in said country. So this to me does not rise to that level. But like you said, it's still rather disappointing and unseemly. I don't know. It's not a fun story to talk about.
Yeah, right. I mean, it really is. There's not a clean exit on any of this, and so I think it's good that, I guess, from an activist standpoint, I'm glad that people spoke up about it and voiced their opinions. I think that's a valuable thing. I also, from a corporate kind of liability standpoint, I can also see why they would enforce the rule the way that that they would enforce the rule. I think there's nuance there that we could debate, but I think the fact that we've covered it is valuable. So we can move on to our final story of the night as well.
So maybe the clean exit, Prime, is to start talking about PlayStation 4 sales. How about that?
Yes, let's go.
So, taken from The Verge, this article by Sam Byford, the PS4 has outsold the original PlayStation and the Wii. And I quote, Sony has announced as part of its second quarter earnings report that it sold 2.8 million PlayStation 4 consoles between July and September. Since the company hit exactly 100 million in sales 3 months ago, the total is now 102.8 million, meaning the PS4 has outsold the original PlayStation. The PlayStation, as you may remember, was an enormous success. It sold 102.5 million units, vastly more than competitors like the Sega Saturn and the Nintendo 64. And until now, it was the second best-selling home console of all time behind the PS2, which sold a probably unrepeatable 155 million. Also of note, the Nintendo Wii's total of 101.6 million has been surpassed this quarter as well. I mean, okay. Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. This story, to a certain extent, when it popped and still now, kind of falls flat for me. The PlayStation 2 selling the number of units that it did in an era of non-technological supremacy, meaning, you know, the PlayStation 5 is the best-selling unit. It has, since it achieved that mark, been superseded in terms of technological capability by several consoles. So that the PS2 owning that title to me is significant, because you would think that there are more gamers in existence now than there were back then. There's more people consuming consoles. The consoles are better. Somebody should have beaten the PlayStation 2 by now. So it holds water for me. You know, the Wii, to me, that 101.6 is still a crazy anomaly in my mind, and we all now know that the Wii didn't have the staying power that's representative of that statistic. It's a blip. It's an analytical blip. It's an anomaly. It's an outlier. And then you have the number for the original PlayStation. So I don't know that I care or that it matters that the PlayStation 4 has achieved these numbers. I don't feel like it's indicative that the PlayStation 4 is necessarily one of the best consoles ever, or has the best library across all time of, like, console games. So I don't know, the relevance of this kind of falls flat with me. Swiss, what do you think?
I will preface my comment by saying I kind of agree with you that this story wasn't one of the more exciting ones for me. But I will give you this perspective to look at it. Looking forward, what happened after the PS2's, you know, really good console sales? The PS3 completely face planted. So the big question is are we going to see a repeat of hubris on the part of Sony and misplaying the PlayStation 5 rollout?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, right? Like, there is that pattern of, you know, PlayStation 2 to 3, Xbox 360 to Xbox One, potentially now PlayStation 4 to 5. We'll see. But again, you also have the pattern of PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2, that it's possible. So, yeah, I think it's the piece that I am more interested in this is when you look at the kind of growth over the year to year, and how strong the PlayStation 2 started the beginning of this generation. You know, that it jumped out of the gates fast. It was off to a big lead. It had a competitive advantage against Xbox One, and even as Xbox began to, you know, as PlayStation slowed and Xbox, you know, picked up sales or stayed steady, that it has such a head start that, you know, it was never a competition this generation.
And that to me is the news story, right? It's almost, and I don't want to. I mean, I feel like the Xbox One has performed incredibly strong, given the anchors it was weighed down at getting out of the gate. And I feel from a service perspective, it has just blown PlayStation out of the water with what, you know. I mean, from a mastermind of strategy perspective, I give definitely more weight to the intellectual cash that Phil Spencer and Microsoft and Satya Nadella have brought to the fight. They have, in my mind, you know, they have scored a good bout, right? They were a fighter who came in overmatched, and what they have done is they have gone in the ring and they have tactically boxed each round to get the best score that they possibly could, knowing that there was probably no way for them to win. it's amazing that they still found weaknesses to chip away at, and fought a good fight. Basically a guerrilla warfare kind of campaign. To me, the bigger part of this story is, as you mentioned, kind of DBQ, is that it's not that the PlayStation 4 sold so well; it's that the PlayStation 4 didn't have any competition, and that it wasn't even a fight. And what's almost more interesting too is that historically, in the games industry, the number one thing has always been way out. It's like a Formula One race, right? It's the number one guy is 10, 15, 13 laps ahead of everybody. What's interesting is what's going on with second and third. And so what's interesting here is more so the story of the Xbox and the Nintendo Switch. And maybe the most amazing thing out of it is that those two, near the end of this generation, are combining forces. Knowing that they can't win this generation, but have definitely kind of coiled themselves up for whatever assault it is that they're going to launch going into the next generation. I don't know, Prime, your thoughts on this?
I think overall, you mentioned PS1, PS2, and then PS2 to PS3. PS3 stumbled out of the gate, much like the Xbox One. Not as bad. Xbox One did. But I think at the end of that generation, I think they're pretty close to sales, though, if I remember correctly, and they might even had overtaken the 360 at the end of it.
I think they, at the point where it's no longer relevant. This is an argument that I had with somebody on Twitter. I call it an argument. They were kind of coming to a gunfight with no rounds in the barrel, so I just muted them. But yes, they were trying to hold this argument about the PS3 having overtaken the 360. It was at a point where the generation didn't matter and that it had already been superseded by console generation 8.
Right, and I'm not trying to say,
No, yeah, I know.
Sony's the best or anything. I'm just trying to say that, the PlayStation is just a powerhouse. It will eventually, I guess sell its numbers if you want to say that, or it just get back in the popular, frame of mind with everybody out there. Obviously PS4, obviously Xbox One, it just stumbled and fell flat on their face and tumbled down a giant hill. But even they kind of started to build themselves back up. And PS4, I'm not trying to be like Mr. Gamer Snob or anything, but I just don't see the games on PS4. I don't know what's selling this console. To be honest with you.
Well,
go ahead, sir.
Oh, sorry. That's the interesting thing, and if you look back at the PS2 numbers, right? 155 million, and you mentioned it's for the time, right, an inferior piece of hardware. Back then, you still had, I think, way more dominance of, like, I would say, third-party console exclusives. Like, that was an era when you still had Final Fantasy X PS2 exclusive. There were a lot of Metal Gear Solid was still a PlayStation exclusive franchise back then. So today we don't have that anymore. If it's a third-party game, it's going to be on probably all the consoles, including Switch now, and PC. So, what, like you said, Prime is moving them. There's some good stuff coming out early in the PS4's life cycle. You had some new Uncharted games, and I was a big fan of Horizon Zero Dawn, but I can understand why you'd ask that question, and it'll be interesting going forward as, like, if it's just a matter of whoever gets, like, they're both coming out in November, right? November 2020.
More than likely, yeah, they're coming out. Yeah, they say they fall, but is it just spite? Like, are people really that down on Microsoft that they're like, oh, this is garbage? Let's go to PS4. I just don't understand it. So that's just me personally.
I will take us a step back from our North American perspective and say, I think looking at the numbers and the ingrained markets, that Xbox sells pretty well in North America. It does okay in Europe, but PlayStation has historically sold very well in Europe. PlayStation has also sold very well in South America. And PlayStation, and Microsoft has very little hold at all in Japan and, the Pacific. So I think that's another piece of this. When I've looked at numbers over the course of this generation, that is a continued piece of this dynamic, is that we may be looking at sales of North American consoles and games, but when we look at it from a complete world market, PlayStation, Sony just has a larger share of that, and that is going to be something that Microsoft's going to struggle with, I would think, even in this coming generation.
Yeah, I'll also say, Prime. I think the reason you don't see the games is because they're the games that aren't being made for you, and to a certain extent, to a larger extent, us, right? Well, first of all, let me say, part of the way that they got there is on cost. They have undercut every SKU of the Xbox by $100 every time Microsoft has come out with a new SKU, essentially. Maybe there's some give and take there in the One S variant, but the initial baseline ones, Sony came out $100 less, and then when we went One X and Pro, Sony was $100 less, and I think that's huge. In a day and age with that $100, that getting up to that $500 mark, there's this very subjective feeling of how much you're paying, even though it's not real, right, in dollars, but there's a certain threshold that you cross with people and consumer onboarding. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask you a real quick question? PS3 versus 360, what was the initial price difference? Do you remember?
It was the opposite way around. So 360 was cheaper. When you talk about the 600, it's still ridiculous when I say it. The 600, the 599 SKU of the PlayStation 3, the 360 was $200, I think, cheaper.
Okay.
The other thing that you did, and it's kind of funny again when we go back and look at this through history, that 360 did a lot of what PlayStation 4 is doing now, in terms of and maybe even did it more, or maybe better, not better, but more. Remember, 360 also had the non-hard drive variant that was even cheaper, so that they sold it without the hard drive.
Initially, yeah.
Yeah, they had all sorts of crazy things, SKUs that came in way under cost from the $599 PlayStation 3 variant, and then I guess the base PlayStation 3 variant was then still $499. So they were the $500 console, and the 360 was the $399 console, and they raced to lower SKUs faster. So there's the cost thing, and then again the games library, and yes, I'll also mention DBQ, that those games also play differently, maybe better overseas as well. What's weird is in this day where we hyper focus on multiplayer and co-op and blah blah blah, PlayStation is still the console that you go to for deep, not all that I like, but deep single player experience, story driven experiences. So you've got your Uncharted's, you've got your Days Gone, you've got your Last of Us coming out. I mean, all of these things, and when you're a deep dyed in the wool PlayStation person, you can look forward to playing about 4 to 6 of those a year over the life cycle. And as much as I love, like I said, my comment about Xbox is always, but different pockets of people buy those on PlayStation. But on Xbox, when Xbox has Gears and when Xbox has Halo, everybody goes and buys Gears and Halo. But still, we got a Gears this year. One. I don't know what the other deep single player story driven experiences on Xbox this year. If story driven stuff is what you need. Now on Xbox I'm fine because I also like Forza and blah blah blah, right? But there's a demo of Gamer that plays those third person action adventure games that are kind of like your Lara Croft kind of games, but they want 4 or 5 of them a year, and they get that on PlayStation.
Any other comments? Oh, I will say one thing. Gascleys, Mr. Gascleys. The Nintendo Wii did have a game release this week, I think, or maybe next week. The Just Dance 2020. So it has legs. Still going strong.
Yes.
I just saw that today. Yeah, it's coming.
And there's good reason for that. I don't know if we covered it, but just interesting trivia tidbit. The reason for that is a lot of Nintendo Wiis are still sold to the education and health service industries, and show up in like senior citizens' homes and stuff, and then when Just Dance comes out, it sells like hotcakes. Yep.
Yeah, I guess they've been releasing the last couple of years too. That's cool. Hey, they got something that's coming out in the system still. All right, guys. Looks like we're just over an hour, I believe, on our show today. Any last words on any of the news stories or anything else that we didn't cover possibly? Nothing? All right. That will put episode number 118 in the books. Join us next week. We got our our GX show, which I guess we got to do our picks plate, I believe. It's a community game that we're going to do, or game night that we're going to do with the four of us, I believe. So we'll have to figure that out. And we'll talk about our games for the past couple weeks or so. I've got some interesting ones, actually. I'm kind of excited to talk about. So hopefully I'll be on the next show. I believe I am, the next GX show. So for Mr. DBQ Hams, Agasicles, Swissguard, thanks for watching. Please join us next week. Good night.
And that's what makes us who we are. We are all searching for that one moment when the music captures our soul.